A processor is executed when you make an AJAX request. Let's create a simple processor. Under Core, Components, Simple Extra, src, create a new folder Processors. Then create a new file sample.php. We define the namespace and add use statements to bring in the class MODX \revolution \processors \processor, and our custom class. Then we create a new class that extends processor. The only function we need to implement is called process. In this example we call getCount to get the count of items in the database. Then we return a success message. To call this processor, we add a button in our JavaScript file, simpleextra.js. The Ext type is button. We define a handler that is executed when the button is clicked. Here we make an AJAX request to the MODX connector. As the action parameter we add the name of our processor class. Then we add a listener to process the response of the request. We simply display the response message in an alert. Let's test it. Open the Custom Manager page. Then click the button. The items count is displayed. In the Network tab of the Developer Console, we can see the AJAX request, the request parameter action, and the message in the response. Let's create a processor to query all our data. In our Processors folder, create a new folder item and a new file GetList.php. We again define the namespace and the use statements. But this time we extend the class MODX \revolution \processors \model \GetList Processor. To simplify the process, MODX provides special processors for common tasks. The GetList processor is to query multiple rows of a table. We just have to add some properties to make it work. The class key defines which class we want to query. The object type is just a string, that will be used in various lexicon error strings. Let's add a grid to our Custom Manager page to display the data. In the file simpleextra.js, we add a new item after the button. The Ext type is simpleextra-grid-items. We have to create this Ext type. Let's add a new JavaScript file for that. In the same folder, add a new file, items.grid.js. Again we use the boilerplate code for an ext component. Then we change where the constructor function is stored. We change the Ext type to simpleextra-grid-items. This component extends MODX.grid.grid. In the configuration, we define an ID and the connector URL. Again we set the action request parameter to the name of our processor class. The grid has a store to hold the data. We define the fields of this store. Then we define the columns that should be displayed in the grid. The data index refers to the field in the store. Now we have to adjust the controller to also load this new JavaScript file. Add another add JavaScript statement. Let's test it in the manager. We can see the grid with our data. When we open the developer tools and refresh the page, we can see the AJAX request with the action parameter and our data in the JSON response. Let's take a look at the MODX source code. Under core, src, revolution, processors, you can find the processor base class. The model processor extends this class, and adds the properties class key and object type that we used before. In the model folder is the GetList Processor. There are different functions that you can override to modify the default behavior of this class. In the function getData, before the data is queried, two functions are called. Prepare query before count and prepare query after count. Then the code sets the sort field and direction, applies the paging, and finally calls getCollection. Let's override the function prepare query before count, to add the possibility to filter the data. The function getProperty returns the value of the request parameter query. If this request parameter is not empty, we add a where clause to the SQL query. We also have to add another use statement for xpdo_om_xpdo query. Let's add a search field to our Ext Grid component. The property T-bar is the top bar above the grid. We add a text field with a listener that gets executed when the value of the text field changes. On the change event, the function search is executed. We set the query parameter of the store to the value of the text field. Then we make sure that we are on the first page of the result, and request the data again with refresh. Let's test it in the manager. When we enter a search value and exit the field, the change event fires and the data is reloaded. In the developer tools we can see the AJAX request with the query request parameter. To allow the user to sort the data in the grid, we can set the sortable property in the columns to true. Now the data in the grid can be sorted differently. The request parameters sort and dir are added to the request.